Why is my dad leaving before I graduate? I don't know, but something strange is happening outside.
Wait, they're the scholarship sponsors?
My father was escorted out of my high school graduation because of the patch on his leather vest. 20 minutes later, 187 bikers walked through the same doors in complete silence. Then, the principal learned who had paid for half the scholarships he was about to announce. Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Mercer, and I was 18 years old when an entire gymnasium decided it knew what kind of man my father was just by looking at his clothes. Before that day ended, every person in the room would learn how wrong they had been. But the truth did not begin with the motorcycles outside Jefferson Ridge High School. It began 12 years earlier with a promise my father made while kneeling beside my 6-year-old bed. No matter how difficult life gets, he told me, I will show up for the moments that matter. He did not always get the chance to keep that promise. My parents' divorce became bitter, expensive, and painfully public. There were court hearings, canceled weekends, returned birthday cards, and long months when I only heard my father's voice through a telephone. Still, whenever I was allowed to call him, he answered, "If you are listening right now, please tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what country you are in. I would truly love to know how far my father's story has traveled." Growing up, I knew 2 different versions of Wade Mercer. The first version was the one other people described. He was a biker. He had tattoos on both arms. He had once spent 11 months in county jail after helping a friend hide stolen motorcycle parts when he was 22. He wore heavy boots, spoke very little, and belonged to a motorcycle club called the Iron Ravens. That was the version my mother, Laura, preferred to discuss. The second version was the man I knew. He was the mechanic who repaired a nurse's car for free because she needed it to reach the hospital during a snowstorm. He was the man who drove 3 hours to sit outside my middle school music recital after my mother refused to give him a ticket. He listened through a cracked, open-fire door and left a bouquet with the janitor. He was the father who remembered every test, every friendship problem, every dream I was afraid to say out loud. And he was the man who never pretended his past had been perfect. I made one cowardly decision when I was young. He told me when I was old enough to ask about his record. I protected the wrong person because I was afraid to stand alone. I paid for it. The only thing I can control now is what I stand for today. The Iron Ravens were part of that answer. People saw the black motorcycles and leather vests, then filled in the story themselves. They did not see the coat drives, veterans' home repairs, emergency motel rooms for families in danger, or vocational scholarships funded through charity rides. The patch on my father's back showed a silver raven above a mountain ridge. Beneath it were 4 words, "No oni radius alone," and those words were not a threat. They were a promise. On the morning of my graduation, Dad changed clothes 3 times before smoothing that old vest over a clean black shirt. He had considered wearing a suit. Then he looked at a photograph of me at 6 years old and remembered another promise. The vest carried a memorial patch for Eli Morris, an Iron Raven who had died the previous winter. Eli had taught my father how to rebuild an engine, organize a charity ride, and believe a person could become more than his worst decision. Eli had also helped Dad pay his first legal bill when my mother tried to end his visitation. Before Ellie died, Dad promised he would wear the memorial patch when I graduated. So he did. Jefferson Ridge High School held graduation inside the gymnasium because thunderstorms were expected that afternoon. Blue and silver banners hung from the rafters. Folding chairs covered the basketball court. Parents carried flowers, balloons, and cameras as if the building itself could not contain their pride. I was sitting with the graduating class near the stage, wearing a blue gown and a silver honor cord. From my chair, I could see my family in the 3rd row. My mother was there in a pale cream dress. Beside her sat my stepfather, Brent Calloway, who was vice chair of the district school board. Brent had spent years presenting himself as the kind of father he believed looked better in photographs. He attended fundraisers. He shook hands with administrators. He knew which people to greet before they noticed him. Dad sat alone near the back. When I found him in the crowd, he lifted 2 fingers to his heart and pointed them toward me. It was our signal. He had used it at soccer games outside courtrooms and through the window of my mother's car. I touched 2 fingers to my own heart. For the first time that morning, I could breathe normally. Then I noticed Brent turn around. His eyes settled on Dad's vest. He whispered something to my mother, stood, and walked toward Principal Harold Bennett. At the time, I did not understand what I was seeing. I thought Brent was handling some last-minute school board business. The orchestra began playing. Teachers guided the last students into place. Principal Bennett stepped to the microphone and welcomed everyone. Then 2 uniformed police officers entered through a side door. They walked along the back wall and stopped beside my father. Even from across the gym, I saw the change in his face. His shoulders did not move. His hands remained folded, but his eyes lowered in the way they always did when someone had decided his past mattered more than his present. One officer leaned close and spoke to him. Dad asked a question. The officers glanced at each other. Then my father picked up the bouquet of white roses he had brought for me and followed them toward the exit. The doors closed behind him. For several seconds, I could not hear the principal's speech. I could only see Dad's empty chair. I reached beneath my gown and pulled out my phone. "Are you okay?" I typed. His reply came almost immediately. "Parking misunderstanding. Focus on your day. I'm proud of you." That answer did not make sense. Police officers did not escort people from a gym because of parking. I looked at my mother. She stared toward the stage with her lips pressed into a thin line. Brent leaned back in his chair, looking satisfied. That was when I felt the first sharp edge of betrayal. My best friend, Maya Torres, sat beside me. "What happened?" she whispered. "I don't know." "Do you want me to get Ms. Alvarez?" Ms. Alvarez was our guidance counselor and one of the few adults at school who knew how complicated my family history was. Before I could answer, a student usher named Jordan crouched beside our row. "Emma," he whispered, "your dad didn't do anything." Some parents complained about his vest. I heard the officer say the principal wanted him removed. A heat rushed into my face. I turned toward the stage again. Principal Bennett was speaking about respect, community, and the importance of judging graduates by their character. The hypocrisy was almost unbearable. I wanted to stand up immediately. I wanted to walk out and find my father. But I was scheduled to give the student address in less than 15 minutes, and Dad had spent years telling me never to surrender my voice to someone else's cruelty. So I stayed in my chair. But I stopped listening to the ceremony. Outside, my father was standing beside a police cruiser with the roses still in his hand. Officer Daniel Ruiz, the older of the 2 officers, looked uncomfortable. "Oh, for what it's worth," he told Dad. "I said you had done nothing wrong." Dad nodded. "Then why did you walk me out?" Officer Ruiz glanced toward the school doors. "The principal said a school board member reported a credible safety concern. He said there might be other club members coming." Dad looked at the empty parking lot. "There are other club members coming," he said. The younger officer stiffened. Dad continued calmly. "They were invited. The Iron Ravens fund the Promise Trades Scholarship. We were supposed to present it after the diplomas." Officer Ruiz stared at him. "You're the scholarship group? One of them?" That was the first moment the story began to turn. For 8 years, the Iron Ravens had raised money through a nonprofit called Front Range Promise. Dad kept the club logo off its letters because he wanted schools to judge the program by its work. The group had helped 83 students, and Jefferson Ridge had accepted more than $480,000 from it. Principal Bennett thanked Front Range Promise at every awards dinner. He simply had never bothered to learn who stood behind the name. Dad took out his phone and called Cole Harris, the Iron Ravens road captain and Ellie Morris's closest friend. Nearly 200 club members were already gathered 4 miles away for Ellie's memorial ride. They planned to stop at the school afterward for the scholarship presentation. Cole answered on the first ring. "You out already?" he asked. "Not exactly," Dad said. He explained what had happened. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You promised Emma you would be in that room. I know. And we promised Eli no one rides alone," and Dad immediately understood what Cole was considering. He warned, "No trouble." Cole agreed. "We have invitations. We walk in, we stand quietly, and we let the truth introduce us." Officer Ruiz heard enough of the conversation to realize the situation could become much larger. He radioed his supervisor, then asked Dad to wait while he returned inside to speak with the principal. The younger officer stayed with Dad. "Is your group really bringing almost 200 people?" he asked. Dad looked down the road. "If Cole says they're coming, they're coming." Inside the gym, it was almost time for my speech. Ms. Alvarez approached my row and handed me a printed copy, though I had memorized every word. "Your father was asked to leave," I whispered. Her expression changed. "Why? His vest made people uncomfortable." She looked toward the back doors, then toward Principal Bennett. "That is not a policy," she said. Brent spoke to him right before the officers came. Ms. Alvarez lowered her voice. Give your speech. I'll find out what happened. I looked at the pages in my hand. My prepared speech was about opportunity. It was safe, polished, and completely wrong for the moment. I folded it in half. Maya touched my arm. What are you going to say? The truth. The first distant rumble reached the gym just as Principal Bennett introduced me. At first, people thought it was thunder. Then the sound grew deeper. Hundreds of parents turned toward the doors as motorcycles entered the school parking lot in pairs. The engines did not roar aggressively. No one raced. The riders moved slowly and carefully, following parking volunteers into neat rows along the far edge of the lot. One motorcycle became 10. 10 became 50. Then the line kept coming. Principal Bennett stopped clapping. Brent stood so quickly that his chair scraped the floor. My mother grabbed his wrist. "What did you do?" she whispered. He did not answer. I stepped to the microphone. From the stage, I could see through the high glass panels in the doors. Men and women were removing helmets and walking toward the building. Many were older. Some used canes. One wore a prosthetic leg. Several carried scholarship folders. Others carried white roses. At the front of the group walked Cole Harris, a 64-year-old retired firefighter with silver hair and a calm expression. Beside him was Dr. Naomi Brooks, an emergency physician and president of the Front Range Promise Board. They were not an invading crowd. They were invited donors, veterans, nurses, mechanics. Teachers, business owners, and parents. Officer Ruiz opened the doors. The room fell silent as 187 members of the Iron Ravens entered in two orderly lines. They did not shout. They did not threaten anyone. They simply moved along the walls and stood shoulder to shoulder, leaving every aisle clear. The final person through the doors was my father. He still held my white roses. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then I leaned toward the microphone. Before I give my graduation speech, I said, "I need to ask why my father was removed from this building." Principal Bennett rose from his chair. "Emma, this is not the appropriate time." It became the appropriate time when 2 police officers escorted an innocent parent out during his daughter's graduation. A murmur spread across the room. Brent walked toward the stage steps. "Emma, sit down," he said. He used the same voice he had used throughout my childhood whenever he wanted obedience to look like respect. I looked directly at him. "Did you report my father as a safety threat?" My mother's face went pale. Brent stopped walking. Principal Bennett reached for the microphone, but Dr. Naomi Brooks spoke from the back of the gym. "Before anyone removes another invited guest, perhaps the principal should read the donor list in the blue folder on his chair." Every eye shifted toward the stage. Principal Bennett looked down. A blue presentation folder rested beside the diplomas. He opened it, scanned the first page, and slowly lifted his head. Dr. Brooks continued. Front Range Promise is the charitable foundation operated by the Iron Ravens. Mr. Wade Mercer is its founder and treasurer. The people standing along these walls raised the scholarship funds you plan to celebrate today. The silence became so complete that I heard one of the banners tapping against the wall. Cole held up a formal invitation printed on school letterhead. "We were asked to arrive at 10:30 to present 6 scholarships," he said. "We arrived 20 minutes early because one of our members was told his clothes made him unfit to watch his daughter graduate." Principal Bennett looked toward Brent. Brent shook his head once, almost too quickly to notice. "I was informed there was a credible gang concern," the principal said. Dad finally spoke. His voice was not loud, but it carried across the gym. "Did you verify that concern?" The principal did not answer. "Did you ask me one question about the patch?" Dad continued. "Did you check whether I had a ticket? Did you see me disturb anyone?" Again, there was no answer. I walked down from the stage. My graduation gown brushed against the chairs as I crossed the court. When I reached Dad, the roses trembled slightly in his hand. That was when I understood how deeply the humiliation had affected him. This man had faced judges, layoffs, debt, and years of being treated as disposable. Yet the thought of missing my graduation had nearly broken him. I wrapped my arms around him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "This was supposed to be your day." I held him tighter. "No, Dad. This is exactly my day, and you are not leaving it." Applause began somewhere near the front row. At first, it was only one person. Then Maya stood. Ms. Alvarez joined her. The graduating class rose row by row until the sound filled the gym. Not everyone clapped. Brent did not. My mother looked down at her hands. A few parents who had complained had stared at the floor. But most people were no longer looking at a leather vest. They were looking at a father holding his daughter. Principal Bennett stepped down from the stage. Embarrassment colored his face. "Mr. Mercer," he said, I owe you an apology. You had every right to be here. Please take your seat. Officer Ruiz nodded to Dad. We're sorry, sir. Dad studied the principal for a moment. I'll accept the apology for now, he said. But after these students graduate, we're going to discuss how this happened. That was my father. He did not confuse forgiveness with the absence of accountability. Cole moved the white roses from Dad's chair and placed them across several empty seats. The iron raven stayed along the walls. Dad returned to his place at the back. I went to the microphone again. My prepared pages remained folded in my hand. I wrote a different speech for today. I began. It was about doors opening after graduation, but 20 minutes ago, this school closed a door on the person who taught me how to keep walking when life becomes unfair. I looked at Dad. My father is not perfect. He has never claimed to be. When he was young, he made a serious mistake and accepted the consequences. Since then, he has spent his life making sure other people do not face their hardest moments alone. I turned toward my classmates. Today, we are being told to build our character. But character is not revealed by the clothes we wear, the job title beside our name, or whether strangers approve of our appearance. Character is what we do when someone can offer us nothing in return. It is whether we ask a question before making an accusation. It is whether we stand beside a person when standing beside them costs us something. The room remained quiet. My father promised he would be here. Other people tried to break that promise for him. He came back anyway. I unfolded my speech, tore it once down the middle, and placed it on the podium. That is the only lesson I want to carry out of this building today. Do not let someone else's fear decide who you are allowed to love, respect, or become. When I finished, the applause felt like it shook the rafters. Dad pressed 2 fingers to his heart. I answered with the same signal. When my name was announced later, the Iron Ravens did not yell or whistle. They each lifted 1 white rose into the air. Nearly 200 flowers rose along the walls as I crossed the stage. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. For a little while, I believed the worst part was over. I was wrong. After the ceremony, families poured into the parking lot for photographs. The approaching storm had moved east, and sunlight flashed across rows of motorcycles. My mother found me near the school entrance. "You embarrassed Brent in front of the entire district," she said. She did not mention what had happened to Dad. She did not ask if I was all right. Her first concern was Brent's reputation. Did he make the complaint? I asked. He raised a reasonable concern. About what? Your father brought nearly 200 bikers to a school. They were invited. Brent complained before they arrived. My mother crossed her arms. Wade knew what that vest would look like. Dad stood several feet away, speaking with Dr. Brooks and Officer Ruiz. I watched him glance toward us, then deliberately remain where he was. He wanted me to make my own choice. What did Brent tell the principal? I asked. This is not the place. You're right, I said. The place was inside, before the police removed my father. You could have stopped it. Her silence answered me. Brent appeared behind her. You are 18 now, he said. It is time you understood that adults sometimes make difficult decisions to keep people safe. Safe from what? From disruption. I almost laughed. Dad sat quietly in the back. You were the disruption. Brent's jaw tightened. Be careful, Emma. One emotional speech does not change your father's history. Dad heard that. So did Cole. Several Iron Ravens turned toward us, but Dad lifted one hand, and they stayed where they were. I stepped closer to Brent. No, I said, but his history proves people can change. What happened today proves some people choose not to. Then I walked away from the 2 people who had raised me to believe appearances were more important than truth. That evening, I was supposed to attend a graduation dinner at a private restaurant arranged by Brent. Instead, I ate hamburgers from a food truck at the Iron Ravens clubhouse. The clubhouse was an old brick repair shop with walls covered in photographs from charity events. Veterans holding new house keys, nursing students in uniform, and families outside rebuilt homes. No one there asked me to forget what had happened. No one asked Dad to pretend an apology had fixed it. Dr. Brooks placed a laptop in front of us. The foundation has pledged another $250,000 to Jefferson Ridge over the next 3 years, she said. We need to decide whether that agreement can continue. Dad frowned. The students didn't remove me. No, she replied. But the institution accepted our money while refusing dignity to the people who raised it. Cole looked at me. What do you think? I had never been asked to weigh in on something that large. Part of me wanted Dad to cancel every dollar and let Principal Bennett explain the loss. That would have felt like revenge. But I remembered the 6 scholarship recipients who had crossed the stage that afternoon. None of them deserved to pay for Brent's decision. "Do not cancel the scholarships," I said. "Pause the new grant. Make the district prove it has changed before it receives another dollar." Dr. Brooks smiled slightly. "That sounds like your father?" "No," Dad said. "It sounds better." The foundation voted that night to suspend the future grant. Existing student awards would be protected. New money would be held and redirected to the Community College Foundation unless the district adopted clear rules against appearance-based removal, required verification of safety complaints, and held a public review of what happened. That should have been enough to force the truth into the open. But the next morning, the district released a statement claiming Dad had voluntarily stepped outside during a temporary security review. I read the sentence 3 times. Then I called Dad. "They're lying. They're protecting themselves," he said. "That is a polite word for lying." He sighed. "What do you want to do?" "Find the proof." That became the beginning of my investigation. Maya's video showed the officers escorting Dad through the doors. Jordan heard Principal Bennett say, "The board member wants him out before the rest arrive." Ms. Alvarez confirmed there was no guest dress code or disturbance, while Officer Ruiz confirmed the police had responded to an administrative request, not criminal conduct. Then Dr. Brooks found something even more important. 3 weeks before graduation, the foundation had sent the school a list of invited presenters. Wade Mercer's name appeared at the top. Attached to the email was a short biography identifying him as the Iron Ravens founder. Principal Bennett had opened the email. The system showed the exact time. He knew who Dad was before the ceremony, so why had he acted surprised when Dr. Brooks revealed it? The answer arrived through an anonymous email sent to the foundation 2 days later. The message contained a screenshot of a note Brent had sent Principal Bennett at 9041 on graduation morning. It read, "The man in the raven vest is my wife's former husband. He has a criminal record and intends to bring gang associates. Remove him before Emma speaks. I will take responsibility at the board level." "Utter it?" The principal had replied, "Understood. We will describe it as a security precaution." And there had been no group of concerned parents. There had been one powerful man, one frightened administrator, and a lie repeated until it sounded official. I recognized Brent's strategy immediately. He had used it throughout my childhood. He never said, "I do not want Wade here." He said, "Other people may feel uncomfortable." He never said, "I want Emma to see me as her only father." He said, "Too much contact may confuse her." His prejudice always wore the uniform of concern. I forwarded the screenshot to Dad. He called me seconds later. "Where did you get this?" "Someone inside the district." "We need to verify it before we use it." Even then, he refused to become the kind of person who punished first and asked questions later. Dr. Brooks hired an attorney to request the original messages through Colorado's open records law. The district delayed. Then it claimed the email could not be located. Finally, after the foundation's attorney produced the screenshot and server information, the district found it. The message was real. But another mystery was waiting behind it. While looking through old custody documents for Dad's correct legal history, his attorney found references to letters I had supposedly refused to answer when I was 11 and 12. I had never seen those letters. Dad had saved copies. There were 23 of them. He brought the box to the clubhouse and placed it in front of me. Each envelope had my childhood address written in his careful block letters. Inside were birthday cards, school jokes, photographs, and short notes telling me he loved me. Several had been returned. Others had never come back, though I had never received them. I remembered my mother telling me Dad was too busy with the club to write. I also remembered writing him letters that he said had never arrived. For the first time, the missing years of my childhood did not feel random. They felt arranged. I confronted my mother at her house. She stood in the same kitchen where I had done homework for most of my life. Brent was at a district meeting. I placed copies of Dad's letters on the table. "Where were these?" I asked. She picked up one page, then put it down. "Your father's attorney is filling your head with old grievances." "Where were they?" Her eyes moved toward a cabinet beside the pantry. That tiny movement told me everything. Inside the locked cabinet, behind tax records and insurance folders, we found a large yellow envelope. My name was written across it. There were 9 unopened birthday cards from Dad, 3 court-approved visitation schedules, and 6 letters I had written to him as a child. My own mother had hidden both sides of a conversation, then told each of us the other had stopped trying. I felt as if the floor had shifted beneath me. "Why?" I asked. She sat at the kitchen table. "I wanted stability for you. You wanted control. Wade was unpredictable when he was young. He was not young when you hid these." She began to cry, but the tears did not change the dates on the envelopes. Brent thought a clean separation would be easier. There it was again. Brent had advised. My mother had agreed. Dad and I had paid the price. "Did you know he planned to remove Dad from graduation?" I asked. She wiped her face. "He said the vest would cause a scene." "The vest did not cause the scene. Brent did. I took the envelope and left. I did not shout. I did not break anything. I simply stopped protecting them from the truth. The district school board scheduled a public hearing for the following Thursday. By then, Maya's video had spread across Colorado. Former scholarship recipients began posting photographs of the Iron Ravens helping them. A welder said Dad had paid his certification fee. A nurse said the foundation covered her textbooks and childcare. A disabled veteran showed the wheelchair ramp the club built in one weekend. The patch that had frightened people at graduation appeared in every photograph. Ne oni ratus alone. At the hearing, the boardroom was filled beyond capacity. Iron Ravens attended, but Dad asked them to leave their vests folded across their laps so no one could claim they were trying to intimidate anyone. "We are here for facts," he told them. "Let the facts be heavy enough." Principal Bennett spoke first. He admitted he had received Brent's message. He admitted Dad had not violated a rule. He admitted he had used the police to enforce a request from a board member without conducting an independent review. Then he apologized again. Dad listened without interrupting. When it was Brent's turn, he tried to describe the message as a misunderstanding. "My concern was limited to student safety," he said. The foundation's attorney displayed the email on a large screen. "Remove him before Emma speaks." I had read the words many times, but seeing them above Brent's head felt different. One board member asked, why was the timing of Emma's speech relevant to safety? Brent had no answer. Another asked why he had called the Iron Ravens a gang without checking the foundation records he had personally approved the year before. Again, he had no answer. Finally, I was invited to speak. I carried the yellow envelope to the podium. "This hearing began because my father was removed from graduation," I said. But that removal was not an isolated mistake. It was the final step in a pattern. I showed the board the old letters. I explained how Brent had repeatedly used his position and reputation to frame personal control as public concern. "My father's record has been public for years," I said. "So has his work. The only new fact on graduation morning was that Brent did not want Wade Mercer in the room when I spoke." I looked directly at my stepfather. He wanted the photograph of a perfect family. When reality did not fit the photograph, he called the police. No one moved. Then Dad took my place at the podium. He did not ask for Principal Bennett to be destroyed. He did not ask the district to pay him money. He asked for 4 things. He wanted a written policy requiring an actual, documented reason before any ticketed guest could be removed from a public school event. He wanted administrators trained to separate appearance from evidence. He wanted school board members prohibited from using their authority in personal family disputes. And he wanted the district's false statement corrected publicly. "You do not owe me a perfect past," Dad said. "I do not have one. You owe every person who enters your schools a fair present." The board voted that night. Principal Bennett received a formal suspension and was required to complete corrective training before returning. The district issued a new statement admitting Dad had been directed to leave despite committing no violation. The 2 officers were cleared of misconduct after their reports showed they had questioned the order and immediately helped correct it once the facts emerged. Brent was formally censured. Then, facing a removal vote and a state ethics complaint, he resigned from the school board. That was not the consequence that hurt him most. The local paper printed a photograph from the hearing. On one side sat the Iron Ravens with their vests folded respectfully across their knees. On the other sat Brent alone beneath the projected image of his own email. For years, he had relied on appearances. In the end, the truth gave him one he could not control. The foundation restored the scholarship grant only after the new policies were adopted. It also required the district to create an independent community committee to review complaints at major public events. The students kept their funding. The adults lost the power to repeat what they had done. That was the kind of revenge Dad believed in. It did not burn down the future. It removed the people blocking the road. My relationship with my mother did not recover quickly. I moved out before college and stayed with Dad for the summer. For the first time, we opened every old letter together. Some made us laugh. Some made us angry. A few made us cry so hard that we had to stop reading. We could not recover the birthdays, recitals, or weekends that had been taken from us. But we stopped allowing other people to decide what happened next. Dad drove me to college in August. We did not take a motorcycle because I had too many boxes. Cole teased him for borrowing the foundation's old pickup truck, but Dad said fatherhood sometimes required 4 wheels and a moving blanket. Before he left my dorm, he gave me the small Eli Morris memorial patch that had been attached to the inside of his vest at graduation. "Why are you giving me this?" I asked. "Because you kept the promise better than I did," he said. "What promise?" "No one rides alone." I still keep that patch on my desk. Years later, I became a civil rights attorney working with families whose voices are often ignored by powerful institutions. On difficult days, I remember that gymnasium. I remember how quickly fear became official when no one asked for evidence. I also remember how quickly the room changed when ordinary people stood quietly beside the truth. So, before I end, let me briefly summarize what happened. My father came to my graduation wearing a leather vest that honored his motorcycle club and a friend who had changed his life. My stepfather used his school board position to label him a threat. The principal accepted that claim without verification, and 2 officers escorted Dad outside even though he had done nothing wrong. 20 minutes later, nearly 200 Iron Ravens arrived with lawful invitations and revealed that their foundation had funded many of the school's scholarships. What looked like a single act of prejudice led me to emails, hidden letters, and years of manipulation. In the end, the truth forced a public correction, the new protections for families, the principal's suspension, and my stepfather's resignation. And what did this story teach me? It taught me that clothing can tell you where a person belongs, but it cannot tell you what is inside that person's heart. It taught me that a mistake from long ago should not become a life sentence imposed by strangers. It taught me that forgiveness and accountability can exist together. It taught me that real justice protects innocent people instead of simply finding someone else to hurt. Most of all, it taught me that family is not the person who demands the best place in the photograph. Family is the person who keeps showing up even after the door has been closed in his face. Thank you for watching. Please like this story and leave a comment. And if someone has ever judged you or someone you love before learning the truth, share your experience below. Your voice may help another person feel less alone. On graduation morning, they asked my father to leave because of the patch on his back. By sunset, that same patch had forced an entire town to confront the labels it carried in its own heart. And when Dad pressed 2 fingers to his heart and pointed them toward me, I finally understood the promise that had brought him back. No matter who tried to close the door, neither of us would ever ride alone again.